The original Paper Mario released on the Nintendo 64 back in 2000 and was conceptualized as a sequel to Super Mario RPG from the Super Nintendo. It became its own thing known as Mario Story in Japan and received critical acclaim when it did release. 4 years later, in 2004, its sequel Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door released for the Nintendo GameCube and was again lauded by critics. It's just received a ground up remake for the Nintendo Switch, but is this paper as pristine as it always was? Or has it creased and crumpled over the years like a 15-year-old receipt you find in the back of your wallet? Well, thank you to Nintendo for the review code, and now let's find out. So in terms of story then, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door begins by telling the tale of a fabled city that was lost over time, sinking into the depths of the ocean. It's rumoured that this city can still be reached via the Thousand Year Door, and when Princess Peach takes possession of a treasure map from the town of Rogueport, now built on the site of that fabled city, she sends it to Mario and asks him to meet her at the town. When he arrives, he finds Princess Peach is nowhere to be found and sets off on a journey to find the crystal stars which could open the Thousand Year Door and hopefully lead him back to Peach in the process. Moving on to gameplay then, and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, as with its predecessor, is a turn-based RPG with a paper aesthetic. You begin in the town of Rogueport, which is basically your hub world which connects everything else together, and the game is set over a number of chapters, 8 I believe in total, and a prologue, which will see you looking for each of the crystal stars in order to open the Thousand Year Door mentioned earlier. Each of the chapters is set in a new town, and here you will investigate, meeting NPCs along the way, some of which will join you for battle. You'll become embroiled in battles as you go along, although these can be avoided by swerving the enemies on screen before they hit you, and ultimately every chapter will end with a boss fight in order to gain that star. Each chapter has a town that you can visit where there will be shops or other points of interest, and it may well be here that you meet those characters that end up joining you on your quest. You can switch between any of the characters that have joined you by holding down the L button and choosing the character you want, and when you do enter a battle, only one of these partners can join you at any one time, albeit you can swap them out and make use of their unique skills against the enemies. Let's look at battling in particular then. Things are quite traditional in this respect. You have your health points, and obviously losing all of these will see you lose the fight. You have flower points, which are basically your skill points. You can use these on your more special attacks. You do have a finite number of these, but you can increase these by levelling up, and we'll look at that in a minute, as well as using items that you may well find about the place or buy in the shops I mentioned to replenish your quota. You have special attacks which you'll gain more of as you go through the adventure, and the bar for these fills up by using other attacks or moves during battle, although you can actually appeal to the audience. Everything takes place on a stage, which will fill this bar up quicker, allowing you to use these special moves more often. Victory in battle will see you earn XP, and as I did mention earlier, you can level up whenever you reach the threshold of 100 in this particular stat, but it's only actually Mario that does level up through battling. Every other character that you have with you, you'll need to find a particular item and then trade these in at one of the shops to level your other support characters. It's an interesting concept, not one I remember seeing in an RPG before. I never played this game originally, I should have said that at the start, but it definitely keeps you on your toes in terms of having to look out for that particular collectible to build your most powerful team. Leveling up requires you to pick one of 3 areas to improve your stats in, being either your health, those flower points, or your badge points, with badges being something again that you'll find throughout the world or can buy in particular shops, and these will give you particular passive abilities that you can then use within battle. It could be that enemies are more inclined to miss you once your health drops below a certain threshold, or that you're able to bounce on an enemy multiple times when jumping on them, dealing more damage, as long as you get the button prompts right. And that's another thing I should have mentioned about battle, is that it is an active battle system, albeit it's a turn-based game, and getting those button prompts right will either deal more damage or allow you to defend yourself against incoming damage. The gameplay holds up incredibly well, I must say. I'd played the original on the N64, but for whatever reason never played this one, and I can definitely see why it was so well loved at the time. I must also mention the humour in the game. Now, this series is well known for it, the games I've played in this series all included it, but it really does support the gameplay having a very strong script. Even moments where I felt perhaps story segments went on a bit too long, particularly in between chapters, that high level of humour and just the charm that the game exudes really pulls it through. It ties everything together, and every conversation you have with a character will no doubt leave you smiling. One slight drawback I did feel was the amount of backtracking that is needed, and ironically actually I've read up since that this has been improved in this version from the original, with the fast travel system having been refined here as opposed to that original game. It's still something I felt was a little laborious, but having read up on how it works in the original, I can definitely see that they have made some steps to improve it this time round. Gameplay is fantastic fun. It's definitely the best game in this series, having now played the only one that I hadn't played previously, and for me it tops other games such as Super Mario RPG in terms of how it all ties together. Some of the new inclusions that do affect gameplay are definitely welcome ones, such as the improvements made to that fast travel system. A few extra save points I'm told have also been added, and the way that you can select between characters, that wheel that I mentioned earlier, is also new for this particular edition. Gameplay gets 18 out of 20. Controls are perfectly solid. The aforementioned improvements help make things such as character selection less cumbersome than they used to be. The perspective of the game means that sometimes you may miss jumps or need to line up a few times with certain items, but it's not a big deal. They get 17 out of 20. Now in terms of the visuals, well, this is a ground up remake. This is not a port of the original game. Of course there are similarities, it definitely echoes the style, but it's much more akin in terms of the engine, I would say, to the Switch specific Paper Mario game, the Origami King. As I hadn't played the original, I did go back and look at some gameplay videos of that original game just to get a sense of what has been changed. And whilst the differences are subtle, they're definitely noticeable once you look for them. They're all about that polish, they're all about bringing those environments to life with extra details that the original game I guess just couldn't implement, but in this version they're here in spades. The extra rubbish strewn across the floor in Rogueport just to give it that dingy feel. The way the stage props unfold themselves when you enter battle. The fact that you can hit your friends or NPCs with your weapon and they'll react, something they didn't do in the original game. Nothing groundbreaking, but definitely just adds a whole new level of charm to what was already an incredibly charming game. The colours are vibrant, the characters look fantastic. The trope of how Mario, obviously being paper, can use this to his advantage by some of the skills that you gain called curses in this game as you go through, creeping through cracks and crevices or turning himself into a paper airplane, just fantastic fun, and they look great in terms of how they come across on screen. I really did love the differences in paper styles between characters. Mario obviously just being a flat piece of paper, as are most of the characters, but then you come across a boss, say for example, who's wonderfully crafted using origami with all the folds and creases, tasseled hair, looking like a living breathing paper model on screen. I think it's very clever, and it just shows how being creative in terms of your aesthetic can hold up so well. Although this is a remake, obviously this is based on that game that's now 20 years old, and the concept looks as good today as it did then. In terms of performance, the Thousand Year Door actually runs at 30 frames per second, which is down from the 60 frames that the GameCube original ran at. Now I'm not sure why this decision was made. It certainly seems a strange choice. It didn't affect the gameplay, I must say, at all, and if you'd never played the original you would never have known, I guess, that it ran at 60. It's just an odd choice, albeit the 30 that it does now run at is a solid 30 with no drops at all. Moving on to the audio then, and as I understand, the music is another part that's received a major revamp for this new version. Tracks have been rearranged, and there have been other improvements such as the standard battle theme changing slightly depending on which town you're in to set the mood of the visual style of that particular town, which I think is a fantastic inclusion. And for me, this was just another example of the masters at work. I do feel Nintendo are one of, if not the best, when it comes to musical scores in their games, and this again knocks it out of the park. You can also pick up a badge which allows you to play the original GameCube versions of each of these tracks, and there is a gallery mode where you'll find the music and screenshots etc. from the game that you can access from the menu. Visuals look fantastic, I must say. I love the paper aesthetic, and the extra details really do increase the level of charm. It's a strange decision to drop it down to 30 from the original 60, but it does still look great, I must say, and it gets 18 out of 20. Audio is top notch, again seems to be the most consistent area in Nintendo's games these days. You can always rely on their music to be fantastic, and a lot of love has definitely gone into rearranging the original tracks whilst making sure to have a way in there to access the originals for those that want them. Audio gets the full 20 out of 20. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door costs £49.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. Had this been a port, this would be way too much money, I feel, despite the fact that actually the original is a game that's creeping up in price these days, so it will cost you a fair bit more than that, I would guess, to buy that GameCube version. But it isn't a port or a remaster, it is a full remake to be fair, with lots of additions ranging from quality of life, to graphical, to musical, to go towards justifying that price. The inclusion of things such as the gallery, plus the fact the game itself will take you at least 30 hours to finish, and that's if you're going from point A to B. There are the badges to collect as well, of course, and there is some post-game content which I won't spoil, but it's there once you've finished off the main adventure. For the effort that's been put into this, and the amount of time it will take you to finish, I would say that value is definitely high in terms of what you're getting for your money, and value scores 18 out of 20. To conclude, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door is a game I've always wanted to play. It's one I missed out on back in the day. I was getting towards that age where you don't play games so much anymore and wasn't really willing to spend 40-50 quid back then on something I wouldn't play very much. But having now got the chance to play it, I must say I'm incredibly impressed, not just in this new remake in terms of some of the features that have been added, but just in terms of how good that original game must have been, and I now feel a bit silly, to be honest, for waiting 20 years to play it. If you've played the original, you may feel there's not enough here to warrant playing it again, or if you own it of course on the GameCube, but for everyone else, whilst it is top tier Nintendo pricing, I would say this is top tier Nintendo in terms of the effort put in and the quality of the game itself in the first place. Definitely worth picking up. The quality of this paper is so high it must have been laminated. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door gets a SwitchUp score of 91%. Thank you everybody for watching this review, I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.